New Orleans changes after midnight. The music fades behind closed doors. Rain shines on the pavement. Balconies become silhouettes. And suddenly, the French Quarter feels less like a neighborhood and more like a doorway. Tonight, I'm following the stories that live behind it. New Orleans has more than one supernatural identity. There's the real spiritual history of voodoo and hoodoo. There are vampire legends carried through the French Quarter, and there are hotels, cemeteries, convents, and mansions where people claim the past still makes itself known. But tonight, I want to know why all of these stories found a home in the same city. Before we go any farther, one thing matters. Voodoo and hoodoo are not interchangeable words for dark magic. New Orleans voodoo developed from African spiritual traditions shaped by Catholicism, colonial Louisiana, migration, and survival. Hoodoo, often associated with root work, remedies, protection, charms, and practical spiritual work, is related but distinct. Movies turned both into horror imagery. The real traditions are deeper, older, and still alive. At the center of New Orleans' spiritual history stands Marie Laveau, a real 19th-century woman whose life became almost inseparable from legend. She was remembered as a spiritual leader, healer, advisor, and voodoo queen. People from different levels of New Orleans society reportedly sought help, information, healing, protection, and influence. Her reputation became so powerful that even her death failed to end the stories surrounding her. Marie Laveau is not the city's only famous spiritual figure. Dr. John Monteleone, known simply as Dr. John, built his own reputation through fortune-telling, herbal knowledge, charms, consultations, and spiritual work. In New Orleans, objects such as gris-gris could be connected to protection, luck, love, healing, success, or influence. They were personal tools of belief, not the movie version of a curse waiting to attack someone. Then the story changes. In the early colonial era, young women were brought from France to help populate the struggling settlement. They carried small chests called cassettes. Over time, cassette became casket. The women became pale strangers. Their luggage became coffins, and the attic of the old Ursuline convent became the center of New Orleans' most famous vampire legend. There is no proof they were vampires, but folklore rarely needs proof. It only needs one locked room, and a city willing to wonder what is inside. Not every frightening New Orleans story began as folklore. At the LaLaurie residence, the horror was human. After a fire in 1834, evidence of extreme cruelty toward enslaved people was discovered inside the property. The event became one of the darkest chapters associated with the French Quarter. The ghost stories came later, but when real suffering becomes legend, the haunting can distract from the people who actually suffered. That part should never be forgotten. New Orleans also has ghosts that appear in places built for comfort. Hotel Monteleone has stood on Royal Street since the 19th century. Its best-known legend concerns Maurice Berger, a young boy said to appear or leave the sound of footsteps near an upper floor. Guests check into hotels expecting temporary rooms. Ghost stories begin when someone, or something, never checks out. New Orleans cemeteries do something few burial grounds can. They turn the dead into part of the skyline. Rows of above-ground tombs form narrow streets and stone corridors. Names fade, plaster cracks, family histories share walls. During the day, they are places of memory and architecture. In the fog, they feel like entire neighborhoods waiting for their residents to return. Voodoo was not the only spiritual current moving through 19th-century New Orleans. The city also embraced spiritualism. Séances, mediums, clairvoyance, and attempts to communicate with the dead were discussed seriously enough to support a French-language spiritualist publication. New Orleans did not merely tell ghost stories. At times, its residents actively tried to answer them. Maybe New Orleans has so many supernatural stories because it never hides its layers. African spirituality, Catholic imagery, colonial history, slavery, immigration, disease, music, death, celebration, and survival all exist on the same streets. Voodoo is real tradition. Vampires are folklore. Ghost encounters remain claims. But together, they reveal something true. This is a city where the past is never placed safely behind glass. It walks beside you. If you want more Haunted America Field Reports, subscribe and tell me which New Orleans mystery deserves its own investigation. Because tonight we only walked the surface, and this city has doors beneath the doors.